So I request you to please wait. And in case you have any queries, you can put it in the chat box, and we'll be happy to answer that. We'll be starting very shortly in about 1 or 2 minutes. Vimal, can you flash the first slide so that we can start? Hi everyone, good morning and good afternoon. This is Sheetal. I'm the lead strategy and outreach for Finovista, which is the in-country partner for MEX program in India. And welcome to the sixth talk series for the MEX program, and today's topic is women in clean cooking. I'll start my discussion while other people are joining in. So without much more time on that, to give you a very brief scenario about the clean cooking in India, basically, it's not that the Indian government has now started focusing on the clean cooking. We all know that the kind of impacts of health and safety and environment that the cooking on traditional fuel has in India. Um, the Indian government has been taking active initiatives, and with the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, we've seen that the government has taken, a leapfrog initiative to shift towards clean cooking. But still, there are pertaining issues with respect to the high cost of refilling when it comes to the LPG cylinders. And we see that a study indicates that despite a 99.9% coverage of LPG connections in April 2021, when it comes to the beneficiary of PMUY scheme, then we see 50% of Ujjwala Yojana beneficiaries refilling just 0 to 3 cylinders per year. This can be attributed to the high cost of refilling the cylinders. If I talk about today, typically a refilling would cost 899 rupees at a commercial cost, and rupees 594 at a subsidized cost. And this is a strong reason why people in the rural areas and BPL households keep going back to the traditional fuels. The other aspect with respect to cooking on LPG is that it incurs high impost cost for the country. India is basically a country which has moved on to a status of electricity surplus nation. But still, when we look at the reliance on electric cooking, there is minuscule reliance on electric cooking, which is almost about zero. Government of India has been taking recently some initiatives like the master campaign Go Electric, in which electric cooking is one of the second most important areas after electric vehicle, which for which they are promoting the use of electricity. Vimal, can you move on to the next slide? When I talk about MEX program, most of us are aware that MEX program is a 5-year funded program by UK Aid, which supports and invests in clean cooking alternatives to achieve this transition of clean cooking. The program is a pioneer in e-cooking worldwide, with active interventions in 15 African and Southeast Asian countries. The program was launched in India in February 2020, and Finovista has been the in-country partner for the program. We worked out a very detailed strategy and a roadmap for the program in India to enable the transition to clean cooking. Uh, Finovista, as an in-country partner in India, has been working with all the major stakeholders in India. Next slide. So basically, the program has some major stands on which it's working in the country. Of course, the promotion of electric cooking is one important aspect. With respect to innovation management, nurturing, the Indian startups in clean cooking domain, scaling up and providing market access to the device manufacturers in India, working on researches and pilot initiatives in the country, and with respect to other activities, MEX in India is basically working with the stakeholders very closely, whether it's the business chambers, whether it's the discoms, utilities, whether it's various government departments, institutions. Next slide. Uh, Now I'll take up very briefly the small, the initiatives under each and every head and the landmark achievements that we've been able to cater to in a very short span of time. So MEX in India has basically, is working with the startups in India and nurturing their capabilities with respect to, them being, global recognized brands. So one of the examples is Ufla. It's a startup. It's a device manufacturer based out of Pune, and it has recently won the Global Leap Awards in 2020. MEX in India is closely working with startups like these in their capability and capacity development. And I'm happy to share that in a small, in a small time of 1.5 years, the startup has gone ahead to establish a full-fledged manufacturing facility and is now ready and capable to service orders on a very large scale for the domestic and the international consumers. We've been working with such startups very closely in nurturing their capability, connecting them with finance, helping them with market access, and time to time helping them with compliances and statutory requirements. Next slide. When I talk about market access support, and I talk about how we've been helping the startups, the next slide. Next slide, please. Right. No, next slide. Previous slide. Sorry. Can you move on to the previous slide? Yeah. When I talked about working with the startups in India, one of the important initiatives that MEX in India is working with is that we are working very closely with Energy Efficiency Services Limited in India in their program of large scale procurement for electric devices. Now, how is MEX working with them? So, we are basically working in adding innovative electric cooking devices like electric pressure cookers in their program. Recently, we've actually conducted a series of meetings with the manufacturers based out in India on how they can be prepared for large scale procurement under such programs and how electric cooking can be promoted. We are very closely working with the discoms and utilities to promote electric cooking to their users and to people in their network. We are also working with EESL with respect to the fact that we know that electric cooking currently in its current form has a lot of challenges when when you come to cooking an entire palette of Indian cuisines. So when I talk about flatbreads, when I talk about roasted foods, there are some challenges. Happy to share that MEX is very closely working with the manufacturers, with ESL as a program company to overcome such challenges. We are involving, experts and device manufacturing companies and device designers to overcome these challenges. Next slide. Can you move on to the next slide? Mex in India is also working under their initiatives with respect to a lot of mapping studies. So as I told you earlier, we've almost mapped the entire clean cooking ecosystem in the country. Aside to that, from time to time, we are also engaging ourselves in terms of working out on studies with respect to what are the comparative cost of electric cooking devices, what is the range which is available for such devices, with respect to mega kitchens, what are the kinds of facilities available, what are the kind of devices that they are using. So such kind of mapping studies and analysis is continuously working, and we are sharing these knowledge to the MEX program team to be shared further to the program countries of MEX program. Next. Can you move on to the next slide? I think there is a hiccup currently. Can you move on to the next slide? Okay.
Screen is not, is my screen is not moving?
No, it's not moving. It's frozen. We can still see clean cooking over here, study analysis and mapping.
It was actually moving at my end. I could see the slides going back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah, hope now you can see. Yeah.
Yeah, can you move on to the next slide after this? Right. So like I told you that Mex in India is actively engaged in the promotion of e-cooking. We've organized multiple events and have partnered with multiple agencies on the clean cooking domain with respect to promotion of such initiatives on a larger forum. One of the examples was that in 2020 we conducted a partner event with one of the business chambers, that is CII, in their device global design summit in 2020 on promoting electric cooking. Next slide. So basically, when I talk about the fact that Mex in India within a span of 1.5 years has been able to enable the transition in clean cooking, and there are multiple initiatives that we have taken. One of the master initiatives is Talk Series that we are a part of right now. When we started this program in the country, we had an experience that when we talk about the transition to clean cooking, there are multiple stakeholders that need to be involved, and there is not even there's not even one single subject which is not critical to this kind of a shift. And therefore we came up this with this talk series concept. Is basically a 12 module series which we call as Mex Talk series, in which we talk about, we conduct this series on a monthly basis. And today is the sixth session of this talk series with the topic of women in clean cooking. The impact of these talk series, we could gather that after we were able to build in critical connections between the stakeholders after the talk series on each and every topic, and we consciously pick up topics which are critical to the transition of clean cooking. And with this, I will not take much more time and invite my panelists for today, the entire panel for today. You can stop presenting, women. I'd like to invite Ms. Sylvia Satori, the Senior Project Manager, Women Economic Empowerment, Energia. Sylvia has been having a more than 15 years of experience at the nexus of energy and environment, women's empowerment and entrepreneurship. private sector development, innovation, and sustainability in the scope of many international development projects, particularly those funded by European Commission and with a special focus on Asia. She holds a master degree in SME management and development and a master's degree in Asian studies. I would like to invite Sylvia now to take on the session.
Thank you, Sheetal, and thank you for opening the webinar and for handing over the mic. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this interesting and very timely discussion. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, Max and Finvisten, for inviting me to participate to this event. I'm honored to join this excellent and inspiring female panelists who will help us unpack many of the dimensions that characterize women and clean cooking. And I'm also personally very pleased to be back in India, although unfortunately still virtually only. Energia is the organization that I'm working with, is an international network of organizations that foster access to and control over sustainable energy for girls and women. This year, we are celebrating our 25th anniversary, and in our journey so far, we have worked extensively in Africa and in Asia, including in India. At Energia, we believe that clean and efficient cooking is one of the most important interventions for women, and we have been and are involved in a number of projects and advocacy initiatives that advance it. In fact, I'm also happy to share that with our colleagues and friends at MEX, we are currently implementing a new program called Gender and Energy Innovation Facility, where we are supporting innovators in Africa and in Asia to experiment new solutions in the gender and energy space. The projects have started very recently, so it's still too early for me to share with you any insights and findings from these experiments. However, I can tell you already that clean cooking is one of the main topics that our innovators have decided to venture into. So I really invite you to closely follow the space on our website and our social media for more insights on how these new experiments on the ground will advance in the clean cooking innovation for girls and women. So I was asked to say a few words before leaving the floor to our panelists, and I would like to take these initial minutes to help set the scene for our discussion today. With our esteemed panelists, we will investigate specific aspects of the relation between women and clean cooking. But before diving into them, I would like to define a bit the framework of this theme, and in particular look at two aspects. I don't know if you can see my slides. I cannot see them. Sheeta, are my slides visible?
Yeah, now they are. Now they are.
Yeah. Can you please move on to the next one? Thank you. Yeah. So there's two elements in particular I would like to briefly touch upon. The first one is why this topic matters at all. And the second one, I would like to cover a bit the holistic approach that is needed to address it. So to the next slide, please. Thank you. So why does women and clean cooking matter at all as a question? I could actually respond to this subject simply by referring you to the figures that you see here to the left. The World Bank estimates that almost 3 billion people in the world still lack access to clean cooking, and only 27% of the population in South Asia has access to it. As you can well imagine, or probably already know, in both instances, girls and women account for the majority of those who are deprived of access to clean cooking, which is already, for a start, a major point. Secondly, as women are predominantly the ones who take care of the household, of cooking, of acquiring cooking fuels, they are also the ones being affected the most by indoor air pollution, the silent killer in developing countries. Household air pollution from cooking with solid fuels already causes more than 4 million premature deaths every year. It increases the risk of respiratory infections and leads to a higher mortality rate for women infected with COVID. Third, this overall situation, which is already bleak, has become even more severe with the current COVID outbreak, which has not only exacerbated long-standing inequalities, but has also put women on the front lines of the pandemic. Fourth, all of this shows very clearly that at this pace, we are very likely to miss the 2030 deadline for achieving universal energy access. Universal access to clean cooking, which is part of SDG 7, cannot be achieved without bold and ambitious commitments, including in post-COVID recovery plans. It cannot be achieved without women being decision makers, co-investors, and providers of clean cooking solutions. In fact, and this is the fifth point, women are also critical to universal access to energy because of their unique position to reach last-mile consumers of energy products and services, given their ability to connect with the customers and to access untapped markets. So, and this is a very important point I'd like to make, women are not just victims, but they're also very powerful drivers of change. Moving on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what we need is a holistic approach that includes and tackles several elements. We need to create the necessary political momentum for clean cooking solutions, to increase public support, to drive potential solutions and spur investments. Clean cooking needs to be a key message from political leaders. Actually, not just a message. Political leaders need to commit to clean cooking and take action. It is encouraging and inspiring to see women and international fora like this one here today. We need more of these fora and more women prominently featured at negotiation tables in national and international policy and decision making. While over the past few years we have seen an increase in women at these events, we are still far from reaching a significant and critical percentage of women in energy fora and policy-making tables. At the same time, we need the women's movement to take on clean cooking. Part of the narrative coming out of the movement needs to include clean cooking. It is an issue that should be on their agenda, but also the mobilization needs to be there. There's a huge potential in the women's movement to demand clean cooking, and to tackle the issue, we need to tap into that potential. Importantly, we need to ask women what their needs and priorities are. This should be guiding the technology, the fuels, the market mechanisms, and the financing that we design and promote. In other words, women need to be involved at all levels and aspects of the clean cooking challenge and in the clean cooking value chain. Women need to be involved in technology development, in awareness raising and education, in access to and adoption of clean cooking services. As women are the ones who predominantly use clean cooking services and technologies, they are the ones who can better tell us what works and what doesn't, in which context. When they speak from their own experience, women are best equipped to persuade other women to purchase and use clean cooking products. With their vast networks in communities and many women already being entrepreneurs, women are the ones who can provide access to clean cooking technologies in rural and hard-to-reach communities. Another dimension that is important to consider is that of financing and investments. Funds for clean cooking solutions should be translated into specific gender indicators and desired gender results. For instance, if you have an investment fund, one of the results could be having a specific target that focuses on scaling up women-led businesses and women's entrepreneurship in the sector. An indicator on women's leadership in the sector could be another one. So I will stop it here for now, and I am sure our panelists will help us move to the next level to understand how these needs can be translated into practice and into actionable strategies. To start with, I would like to turn to Professor Jyoti, Executive Director of the Integrated Research and Actions for Development. Professor Jyoti, you have a very elaborate experience of working in the domain of clean cooking. As women are the primary users of clean cooking solutions, can you share your views on how women can be strategically engaged in the development of policies in the domain of clean cooking? Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, Finovista, for inviting me. We are also celebrating 25th anniversary of Energia, of which I have been member from the very beginning, 25 years ago. And also today is Bangladesh liberation anniversary. And we know that Bangladesh has come very far by putting emphasis on women on all aspects of development. So clean cooking is really about the center of that is women's empowerment, because you people take let's say air pollution, but when you look at the entire value chain, it's not just air pollution. It starts from collecting and gathering in the woods, and then transporting for long distances, and then processing, drying, making sticks and chopping it and so on. And then comes the cooking. And certainly air pollution is important, but it does not solve the entire problem if you just do improved stores. So unless you look at the whole spectrum of ways in which women are affected, we may not be able to solve this problem. So, but gradually it has come, and I must say it took too long than I would have liked, because I wrote a paper of gender issues in energy policy in the journal called Energy Policy way back in '95, where I advocated that we must get women must get LPG now. And frankly, if we had done that, perhaps we would have been much better off, because of the not only just health of women, but the households. And women would have had more time, and something similar to developed countries could have happened. They were completely bogged down with energy value chain. Now, coming to Ujjwala, I was also active supporter of Ujjwala, but now I feel, and we used to have many meetings with Minister Pradhan and so on. But now I feel we should move on for several reasons. One is that the LPG moves on 4 wheels, 2 wheels, whatever it is, and that's not how the energy should be moving. Secondly, so it has energy costs in it. Well, another thing is that it is, of course, nowadays with climate change concerns, people are talking about it. But of course, I would never agree that these things should be done for climate change, because there are many more urgent things that have to be done for climate change, and this is the last thing that has to be done for that reason. But another reason is that we would never reach this kind of scale. Still, we have made a very big beginning and very substantial contribution by switching to Ujjwala, and but yet it will not complete our SDG 7 goal dream and or goals, and that SDG 7 requires a technology mix, and that technology mix has to be another one is the electricity. Now, electricity is in far more households, whether it is in India or Africa or everywhere. There are more households with electricity than any other. Of course, the quality and the access has not yet reached at that level where some of them can cook. Sometimes it's just good enough low voltage with light, fans, bulbs, and television, and this needs power quality and electricity. But yet, once the wires are there, it's quite possible to connect them, and they have to be connected for other reasons as well, not just for cooking. So perhaps we should focus on seeing how this can be done with 2-3 technologies. In energy, we have always had a technology mix at the national and global level. At any given time, we have 4, 5, 6 energy technologies, whether it is coal, gas, solar, wind, nuclear, hydro, and so on. We always have technology mix. So why just rely on LPG? So we need to have electricity, but electricity also in a grid as well as solar. So that is again another mix that we may need, and we really need to map out the SDG 7 strategy. Otherwise, with just LPG, we may not make it. Though I fully support, and we need also piped natural gas, PNG, for urban areas, LPG for urban plus surrounding areas, and electricity everywhere. And gradually, after some time, I think first goal is to reach 100% households, but gradually we may even want to retire LPG because of the climate change concerns. But right now, I would not say that the women should pay price for the some other rich people's whether it's they are in their own country or elsewhere problems. They should be first given whatever their development calls for, and then we so once they have a habit of clean cooking, they will not go back to the old ways. Though right now, because of the inadequate number of LPG, sometimes it happens. But we have done some surveys, and then it seems that they, some of them said we will not go back to biofuels because but some about 28% said if it gets too expensive, we would go back to biofuels. But 42% talked about, or even larger percent, and then some were neutral also. They made other conditions. But they said we'll use less, we'll save from others expenses, but we will continue to stick to LPG. And certainly none of us will do that to shift to biofuels. It's too now far for us. I mean, us means people like who are listening here, but also much less privileged people will not move back to biofuels after some point. So we should take this opportunity and try to see appropriate technologies wherever and that would depend on the place, as well as income levels, as well as women's own emancipation, and we should now really make sure that SDG 7 plans are underway, and that cannot be done without a good mix of technologies. Later on, when we move on to net zero emissions, first, of course, it's the power sector, then electric vehicles will come there, but that at some point, all the households will have to also switch to that. But that's a little far away, but we should keep that in mind when we do these strategies. So I think that's how I see the scenarios and what we were doing in 95 when Energia started, and what we are doing now. We are also doing electric EPC promotion in Nepal with Max. And we recently, and before that, we wrote a technical paper, issue paper with Joan Cloak of Max and Eliza Puzzolo and so on, Daniel Pope. 4 of us wrote this paper on why electric cooking must be introduced before the Max started this program. So about 3 years ago. So, and Simon Batchelor, perhaps, I hope he is listening. He also has a lot to contribute in this electric pressure cooker and battery-based cooking. So we need to bring all of that in and ensure the complete coverage of all households everywhere in this world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Jyoti, for your vast insights and for touching upon a number of critical areas we should definitely take into account. I would like to move on then to our next panelist, Ms. Shalu Agrawal, who is a senior program lead with the Council of Energy, Environment and Water. Shalu leads the Council's work on residential energy access, demand-side management, and power sector reforms. She uses data to study the changing energy landscape and devise strategies to ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy. So, Shalu, according to you, how would the transition to clean cooking change if more women were involved in on-the-ground pilots, research programs, and building initiatives? In particular, would this wider engagement of women accelerate the pace of behavior change of consumers and thereby accelerate the adoption of clean cooking solutions?
Thank you so much, Sylvia, and thank you also, Dr. Parekh, for your intervention. I mean, the fact that cooking is predominantly a gendered role, unfortunately, though, we need a gender lens to study this problem, going beyond just the lens of energy poverty, which has mostly, dominated the sector. And that's because, I mean, if you just look at from a household perspective, there's so many priorities that a household has to take care of, to manage within their budget. And the question of how do you allocate resources, right? And where does clean cooking sits into that priority becomes important. And then the question of whether women have the agency to question, influence that decision becomes important. And as researchers, I think having more women on the field definitely makes a difference, because these are very personal questions, right, that we are trying to understand. If we have more women foots on the ground, we certainly are able, to ask more relevant questions, able to identify bottlenecks, able to collect better data. And that's something that any researcher who's collecting primary data on the field would, know that even when you have to do surveys, right? And we have done lots of large-scale surveys in India across states, over many years, and we try to make sure that, even within the surveys, we have at least 50% women, and it's often difficult to find, right? So it's not so easy to come by and to make them also comfortable and safe while they are approaching those households on the field. So it is also a question of how do you make women researchers, right, comfortable on the field, trying to understand the changing landscape, which then can also yield us better data, when we are trying to understand. But I also think we need to take a step further as researchers. I mean, it's not just about gender. I mean, okay, gender is the first step, but we also need to be proximate, even those who are designing the research, right? So are we able to empathize with those whose life we are trying to change? Do we understand their context? Do we understand the kind of pulls and pressures they have to manage? And it's not just as simple to say that, okay, let's empower women and the change will happen. So yeah, I mean, we all need to, I think definitely there's, the change will be faster if there are more women on the ground. But women who are also committed to, understand, immerse themselves in the context and, try to answer the questions that have not been answered.
Thank you, Shalu, for adding this more human dimension to the topic and to the complexity indeed of the issue. Indeed, gender is just part of the puzzle, but it's not the one and only element to be taken into account. We've already heard of a number of them, ranging from the technology to policy to indeed the ability to empathize with the final users. That's a very important one. Thank you for that. And adding on to that, I'd like to turn now to Dr. Minal Vivek Kadra, who's actually from the manufacturing perspective. She is the co-founder of Kivu, a Kingdom of Good Food, which she has started in 2019 with a vision of providing sustainable livelihood opportunities to rural women by baking healthy food using solar energy. So, Minal, as a manufacturer, how do you factor into the product innovation, the user feedback, and consumer friendliness when your consumers are largely women? So again, we're going back a bit to the human interaction element here.
Yeah. Actually, so we tend to understand what appeals them the most. When we talk about the cooking, it's about cooking dal, roti, chapati, your daily vegetables, then drying and roasting also. But when we talk about cooking specifically, like dal and all, this is a daily task, right? So, and it is very time specific. But so it is very difficult to change the women in general, because it is difficult to bake like your chapatis on the solar. But when it comes to drying and roasting, these are not the urgent task. So it is very easy to shift them to the solar ovens and solar dryers. So we have designed the solar roasters and dryers, which are very convenient to use. And so the shift of the women is very easy from the conventional method to the solar ovens. Then we have designed solar cookers that are portable and can be carried to the work site also. And like chapatis and all, this takes a lot of time. So our more focus will it had been to the boiling and baking also.
Thank you for this direct insights from the grounds. I'd then like first to remind our audiences if you have any questions or any comments or any reactions to what you've been hearing from our panelists, you're welcome to share them in the chat, and we will pick them as the event develops. And in the meantime, I'd like to start a new round of questions and invite our panelists to share their views about an aspect that in fact has already been mentioned en passant, meaning we know that in rural and upcountry locations, women are generally not the one who make the purchase decisions. And this applies also to cooking devices and equipment. So these are decisions usually taken by men, or in any case, men do play a big role in influencing the domestic decisions. So, in your experiences, how can we empower this kind of women to make informed decisions and also to be able to contribute and be part of the decision-making process at home? Anyone can take the question. Professor Parikh, if you would like to go first, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we can.
I can go otherwise. Or Minal, you wanted to go first?
You go on. No issue.
All right. Well, I think I mean indeed lack of women's participation in decisions concerning cooking is a concern. I mean, from our latest round of Pan India household survey that we conducted, between 2019 and 2020, we find that almost 40% households, females members are able to order LPG refills, which means like in the remaining 60%, it's still a decision that is influenced by men, even though they're not the ones who are involved in the cooking process. And that certainly is disconcerting. But I mean, the positive side is, sorry, just give me a second. I think there's some noise from my side. Is it okay? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you. Right. So I think these stats, of course, tell us where we are, but we need to better understand, right, what are the reasons why such decisions are not being taken by women when it should naturally happen. I mean, is it because of lack of ownership of, say, phones with the women that they can't order a refill? Is it because of lack of ability to move on their own, like, lack of, ability to drive a car or a vehicle? Because often we see that, the fuel is not accessible on the time, right? We also see that, from our different study where we did a survey with urban slums in 6, North Indian states, that the women's status in the household positively, I mean, as a household head, positively correlates with the household using LPG as a primary fuel, which is a clear indication that, if as the women's sort of role in decision making improves in general, that also positively reflects on the greater use of clean cooking fuel. And of course, the anchor here is LPG, but that could be extended to even electric cooking or other means of clean cooking. The question on how can we influence women's choice, I would like to answer it in 2 ways. In the short term, I think, of course, making information more accessible in the format that women can actually understand becomes important. Like, how do you enroll in programs that are being run by the government? How do you buy a new device? What are the modes that women have access to? And we should be doing the marketing through those rather than the common modes that men usually access. Can we make women as participants in these schemes rather than just as beneficiary? And I think, the Ujjwala program had very, sort of promising, or rather, inspiring elements where, the connection was given to women, to women's name. There were also component of village level LPG panchayats, right, where women were brought together, made to talk to each other, and made aware about the benefits of it. Although, this program can be made further inclusive by also ensuring that men are also participating, because unless they also become a convert into the decision-making process, you're just trying to tell those who stand to benefit from it, but don't have the agency to. But in the longer run, of course, I think, as we all know, more focus on, women education and enhancing women's participation into the labor force is what really would, lead to that, that change that we all desire, that women have the agency to over matters that affect their health and then their quality of life. So I'll stop there and I can answer any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Shalo. That was a very rich reaction. I think Mina wanted to follow up on that. Or?
Yeah. Thank you. I think there are two aspects. One should be the convenience, and the other should be the value addition should be there. So if you're just pushing them to use it, I don't think it's gonna work ever. So what I think now, if we make it easier and convenient to use it, so that the rural or urban, any woman should yearn it to have it, So we should have some values like saving of your time. Then we can generate some livelihood from that source. Because as a dentist, I have observed that cooking in a solar ovens and all these, when you go in clean cooking, specifically in solar ovens, it actually saves your time. It is very convenient. You don't have to stand over there like unless and until the food don't get cooked, I can't move from here. You can just leave your food in the ovens and you can do your other work. So it's very convenient to use it. That's it.
Thank you. I think this builds well with the point that Shalo was making of improving the communication and make it really engaging and relatable to the experiences of women, so that it can really become aspirational for them, and in turn, hopefully, can also support their agency in the decision-making process. I don't know if Professor Jyoti, you wanted to add anything.
I would just like to say we should now the people who manufacturers should get involved into this and really make it versatile enough. Right now, the electric cooking is kind of at least in the affluent households, it's a second option available if there is no LPG. But that's fine. If it, but then even then, you need a much better appliances that are efficient, which are convenient. Sometimes they don't have vernacular languages. Explanations are needed on how to do it. They should be sturdy enough so that rural areas poor electricity doesn't blow them off, and so on. So they should consider more sturdy and more effective and acceptable appliances. And we should expand the range. Right now, of course, we have huge number of appliances ranging from micro oven to electric pressure cooker, induction cookers, and just plain simple hot plates, cooking range, and so on. So there is a plethora of appliances, but some of them are not really suited for mass scale that is needed for SDG 7. So they are good for certain elite urban population, but not good enough for as and when electricity, they are claiming that it has reached everywhere, but not so. The quality of electricity and improvement in appliances is very much essential. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jyoti, for adding on that. I don't know if we are having. Oh yes, we have a participant has raised a comment in the chat. Dr. Ashutosh from Irade. As Shalu mentioned that there's a correlation between women being household heads and LPG usage. Just for a second. Oh, yes. Please.
Am I audible?
Yes,
so, Shalu, as you mentioned, there is a correlation between women household head and LPG uses. However, the literature suggests that normally the poor household where the male member is not there, they generally become the women household head. And they are mostly poor. So LPG uses are not very significantly correlated as per the literature with the household head, men or women. It is possible that if women are working women, especially in the urban area, and they are the household load, then it is possible for time saving and other things. They may use LPG. So can you reflect more on it? Like why you have found this phenomenon different from the literature that women household head uses more LPG compared to male household head in the rural area? And why do you feel this will happen if poverty, they are mainly the poverty stricken women in the rural area? And why PMUY is not making any effort for the women, even giving the LPG connection on the woman name?
Right. So thanks for that question. I think since I mentioned our finding is in the context of urban slums, right? And that definitely has a different dynamics of different, intra-household dynamics within men and women, certainly. And our data suggests that, and it's not to suggest that women being household head is the only way to, it's not a causation, it's just a correlation that in women in households where women had a greater say, we also observe in parallel a greater use of LPG as a primary fuel. This definitely may not hold true in case of rural households, and we have not explored. So I think that difference in inter-household dynamics may explain why this finding may differ from the literature. On the question on why PMUY is not leading to a difference, if I interpret your question correctly, because that we've already given the connection in women's name. But should that have changed the situation completely? I think that expectation is not correct. The idea of giving that connection women's name, I think, was driven by the fact that we wanted to create an agency that they should own that connection, and it's being recognized that okay, they are the prime user of it. But ultimately, whether it's being used depends on so many other factors, right? That Dr. Parekh touched, and even Sheetal touched in her earlier presentation, that it's a question of affordability. Prices have gone up by almost 50% over the past 1 year. It's a question of timely availability of the fuel. It's a 14 kg cylinder. A woman can't just lift it and bring it to home if it's not being home delivered. So you're still again reliant on a male member being willing and able to, go to a nearby provider and bring that cylinder home. And then finally, also, the taste factor comes in. Even in semi-urban areas, you have a lot of families who would say we still like to have rotis cooked on the chula because it tastes better. And of course, that's partly, I think there's some cognitive dissonance at play, that we are able to normalize the effects of smoke, even though people.
Shalu,
We lost her in all.
Can I add one till the Shalu is not there? So, Dr. Ashutosh, what I also understand when I spoke to CEW team, so their current study is basically focusing on affordable clean cooking. And they have actually not looked gender angle into that till now. And when we spoke and we understand about the mixed program and we interacted with all the agencies, So Shalu, I am talking on your behalf, so hope it is fine. So CEW's role was mostly an affordable, bringing the affordability component into that, and not looked into gender angle. So possibly gender angle can be looked upon on some sort other studies, but that's why when we had a discussion with the Shalus and team, so that's how we got. So maybe like Dr. Ashutosh, that's why we keep doing a lot of series or discussions and all. We are trying to understand what is going to work, and we have some certain idea with which agency is focusing what. So hope I am able to answer your queries, and we can further reply any of your queries if you want. Yeah.
And Shalu, now that you're back, if you would like to continue, I think you're also expressing additional thoughts in response to the question.
So I was almost nearly done. I mean, I was just talking about that how multiple factors influence. I mean, giving out connection in a manner that's accessible is definitely the first great step, but we need to keep sort of making, other sort of addressing the other barriers that are keeping households from using it in a sustained manner. The question of electric cooking is a very interesting one as well. We also, as part of that survey, tried to understand what people think about transitioning to electric cooking, in full, if they were given an option, and would it be reliable? Would it be, sort of affordable? And do they think that will be safe as well? And we find very interesting, insights, even though, and then, in terms of users, not very few people may be relying entirely on electric cooking, as, you also mentioned, but the uptake is happening. We see almost 5% people in the country have appliances that they can use for cooking at length, but they're not using it as much. It's a secondary fuel. And that ownership is also, concentrated among mostly urban and richer households, right? Which then leads to the point that the devices that are being, made or sold in the market are, tending to that kind of consumer segment. Are we thinking about designing appliances that may be compatible with the kind of cooking practices and appliance, requirement that rural India has? Unless that happens, even if electricity is accessible, even though people get, subsidized electricity, the quality is also improving. Unless that compatibility of appliance issue also, gets resolved, the transition will be challenging. It will only, become a secondary fuel. And that's what most researchers think, that, probably what we are likely to see going forward is a combination of fuel stacking, but of a cleaner stack. So, LPG combined with electric rather than LPG combined with firewood, hopefully. So yeah, I'll stop here.
Thank you. And then we go back full circle to the issue of the technology mix that was advocated by Professor Jyoti at the very beginning. So thank you very much to all of our panelists for their thoughts and, there's issues here, for your thoughts and your experiences. I think we still have a few minutes left before wrapping up the session. So I would like to take this opportunity to maybe ask our panelists if they can give a final statement on their views on how the clean cooking sector can be made more inclusive. So in a way, wrapping up and connecting the dots on all the different elements that we have discussed up until now. So maybe I'll go back to the original sequence. Professor Jyoti, if you would like to go first. Thank you.
No, I think we need what do you say, a blueprint till 2030, saying how we will meet the SDG goals, and with what tools, the policy tools, as well as what stakeholders are involved, and so on. So we need to see where are the LPG distributors, why they are not reaching, they are beyond 10-20 kilometers. They are not really delivering. They were expecting people to come and pick it up. These are the matters that one has to look at. Naturally, of course, that's usually the men who go there, and so women's transport also becomes an issue. So we need to have figure out what are the current and must be gradually both genders should get involved. So certainly in the elite households, that's usually quite now happening quite frequently, but not in the ones who are not yet privileged enough and who actually don't have access are the ones where this is not happening. So I would say planning till 2030 and with the involvement of both the gender.
Thank you, Professor Jyoti. These are two very concrete, actionable points that can guide us ahead, despite still being fairly ambitious. After all, 2030 is really around the corner, so we need to act fast. Shalu, and your take?
Well, I'll also give two sort of suggestions. I think one is, can we treat the LPG sector also like the electricity sector? I mean, even though LPG sector service delivery may be better, but can we think of service delivery standards for various actors involved in the supply chain? So how do we go about doing it? The second would be, I think it may sound funny, but I think that really strikes at the root of the problem, that we need to also work towards shifting the gendered role of cooking. When more men start taking on the cooking responsibilities, I think the problem of decision making will get addressed very strongly, and that of course is starting to happen in parts of urban areas, especially, or metro towns. But I think probably
problem would have solved long ago. If that was the case, they should have solved it long ago by both the genders. Yeah.
But we're not working towards it, right? So we are trying to solve the symptom of the problem by not, why shouldn't cooking energy researchers also look at shifting the gender roles? I mean, we leave that work to the gender or gender experts. I mean, but it's also a clean cooking energy issue. So
yeah, I think it's actually a very interesting proposal as part of that gender and energy innovation program I was mentioning earlier. Indeed, one of our innovators from sub-Saharan Africa, which is actually a PR company, so not even traditionally gender experts, they're precisely going about improving access to clean cooking devices by providing cooking classes to men and boys, and setting up an online platform for cooking for men. So I think it might sound daring, but that's definitely perceived as a need by many out there. So we are really keeping a close eye on that and see how that develops. I'll let you know. Maybe some findings would be interesting for you as well. And then,
so on the positive note, by the way, we also observe that there's a strong shift happening in the way the burden of collecting firewood is distributed within family. So earlier it used to be only women or majority women, but now recent surveys suggest that almost 40 to 50% of households, men are the ones who are typically collecting, and of course that may be a result of decrease in biomass availability, so you have to travel stronger, security concerns come, so whatever dynamics, but that shift is happening. So I think as nuclear families are also emerging more, there is an opportunity to actively work towards it. So yeah, probably that could be another research sort of program to think about.
Thank you. That's another interesting takeaway. And last but not least, Meenal, what would be your advice or your final statement on how to make the clean cooking sector more inclusive?
I think we should link the clean cooking with their aspirations, with their dreams. If you could establish a single example of a woman where they are generating their own livelihood and they are getting their decent income, respectable, if they are getting profession. So though I think we don't have to do anything after that, because the transition to the clean cooking as smooth as the mobiles.
Yeah, I think some examples in that direction are already there, but probably not sufficient enough or not visible enough to really serve as role models yet. So we need to scale up the visibility also of those best practices. So Sheetal, maybe I hand it over to you. I think we've got a lot of very interesting, inspiring food for thought from our panelists that are inviting us to reflect on a number of different dimensions, ranging from the technology to, in a way, the branding and the engagement of the consumer, the participation of women. I really liked also Shalu's point that women should be considered not just as beneficiaries, but really as active and equal participants along the whole value chain. We've seen how the issue is really vast and needs to be addressed from a macro as well as micro perspective, with input going bottom up as well as top down. So yeah, I think we also got a lot of practical advice on how we can, in our respective area of work, start really translating this input into actionable points. So maybe, Sheetal, I hand it over back to you for your concluding remarks. From my side, I would really like to thank the panelists for being so open and generous in sharing their experiences and their thoughts. It's been a pleasure to meet you all and to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you so much for holding the panel so generously. And thank you, all the panelists. I think we've had some wonderful discussions today, and we were just hoping for one round of session, and I think we fruitfully concluded 3 rounds of fruitful discussions amongst the panel. Honestly, sharing that when we were thinking of setting up this panel and bringing about this subject, we initially struggled to actually get more and more women in particularly in India, who are working in this sector. So that actually brought about this thought very actively to us, that as women, we are the primary users of these clean cooking solutions, but our roles have to be much more than users. And we could really understand that if the role of women is through the entire value chain, the transition that we are talking about towards clean cooking could be accelerated at at another level altogether, and we would get solutions which have higher adaptations. Shalu and the other panelists touched on to the points that what could be the current barriers, and how could the engagement of women actually accelerate this adaptation. And I think this is just the starting point. We need more discussions like these going in the future, and more women coming out and playing an active role in enabling this transition. On this note, I would just like to say that we'll be setting up entire report with respect to the recommendations and the discussions which have been done in this panel today, and it will be shared on the MEX website quite soon. And we'll be coming up shortly with our next topic for the talk series. As I told you, that this is a 12 module session and it's just the 6 talk series. So thank you everybody for giving us this time and this opportunity to connect with all of you. Once again, to all our panelists and Sylvia, thank you so much for your time and this discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. And also, let me take this opportunity to wish everyone a happy end of the year, as we are approaching the end of 2021. So if you're having a few days off, have a joyful and relaxing break, and may the new year be very fruitful and filled with health and safety first, and a lot of good news ahead. So looking forward to catching up in the new year as well. So best wishes, and thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meeral. Thank you.